in the world. How big a deal is not having 2 out of 3 causes of the deaths in the world? How big a deal? What a big deal. Big deal. Okay. Well, what I can tell you is our name Kiani, it didn't come from a doctor who went out and tested a name to see if the name was a good name. This came from the Tlinkits, and it means strong medicine. And when they think of medicine, they think of food. They don't think of the American pharmaceutical industry or the German pharmaceutical industry. And the word Kiani means strong medicine in their language. And we took that for our name. Now, the Powells, very wealthy. Who in here has heard of Mrs. Powell's cinnamon rolls? Okay. Who's heard of Cinnabon? Everybody. Well, Mrs. Powell started what we now know as Cinnabon. They sold out, and they're not hurting too bad. Now, when they learned about the story of the Tlinkits from an anthropologist who had concluded a 10-year study, first realized that they didn't have heart disease, cancer, or diabetes. It just didn't exist. That's why they didn't have the words in their language. They had words for getting eaten by a polar bear, starving to death, freezing outside in the snow. They had lots of words for those kind of things. But no words for the symptoms of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, a whole bunch of other things. Well, what the Powells did is they said, you know what? We got to figure what's going on. Because the kids of the parents were getting all those diseases. And at first the anthropologists thought it was a genetic aberration, that these people had a genetic change. And that's why that was the case. But then they learned the kids did have all of those problems. Thank you, white men, because they had adapted to our diet. Well, we won't talk about that. Now, what I will tell you is that they went to the 12 tribes of the Tlinkits. We harvest the wild Alaskan blueberry for us and effectively tie up the crop by virtue of who would harvest it. Now, I live out in Washington State, and we've got millions of acres of irrigated ground. And we have a lot of people that will come, and you put them on buses, and you run them out to the fields, and they harvest the crops. There are no roads where these wild Alaskan blueberries grow. You can't do that. So they effectively figured out a way to create a barrier of entry to the competition. From a business standpoint, it's pretty smart. And they paid the Tlinkits in February, and they pay them again in June at harvest time. And they've effectively locked out the competition to be able to access these wild Alaskan blueberries on a commercial scale. But they knew that this was a big deal, and even though they were pretty well financially off, they knew they needed even deeper pockets yet. So they came back to their home in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and they approached the Hanson family and the Taylor family. Now, there are people that are billionaires, and then there are people that become a billionaire over again every single year. The Taylors and the Hansons' annual incomes is almost $2 billion per year. Now, what's really shocking is when they decided to start Kiani, they didn't run to a bank and borrow some money. They didn't go running around looking for angel investors. They didn't go looking for venture capitalists. They didn't go to Wall Street and float bonds. They didn't go to Wall Street and do an initial public offering, an IPO. They just got the checkbook. They financed this thing themselves. Now, the Hansons are the largest independent petroleum distributor west of the Mississippi River. That takes in Texas, Oklahoma, California. That's a pretty good territory, isn't it? They're pretty well off, and they're diversified into hotels and all kinds of stuff. Now, the Taylors, who in here's eaten a French fry before? Well, they're the second largest potato grower in the world. When you go to Idaho Falls, Idaho, and if you want to go visit the farm, they'll throw you in a Cadillac Escalade and drive you up onto a hill. And when you were a little kid, you used to play helicopter, you put your hands out and you'd spin in a circle. Well, they'll ask you to do that. But they're not asking you to be a helicopter, they're asking you to look at panoramic view in 360 degrees, because everything you see is theirs. All of it. Who in here is a person knows a little bit about acreage? A little bit? Is a 3,000 irrigated acre farm pretty good size? That's big, irrigated. How big is 30,000 irrigated acres? Is that little or big? That's enormous. Well, these guys, on just one plot, is 30,000 contiguous acres with nobody owning land in between. All irrigated. Oh, but that's only a small fraction. Because, see, they're also one of the largest cattle operations in the West. And they have a little tiny piece of ground that they run them on. 250,000 acres. How big is that? There are counties that are not that big. So when you talk about these guys having deep pockets, there's deep pockets and then there's deep pockets, right? Well, what's fun is, when they launch this company, they can do whatever they want. They can afford to do what they want. Now, it's pretty important to understand their vision. And their vision was really straightforward. It was to bring the highest quality products to people all over the world. But they needed help. They couldn't do it by themselves. So for all those people like me and Dr. Sheely and Vince and the other people in this room, they're willing to share in the profits of helping to get the word out to as many people as will do the work. And then they're extremely excited about hitting that first mile marker. And I said first, because these guys, the B word, already been there, done that, got that t-shirt. So hitting that first billion is just a stepping stone to where they want to go. And this is their real passion. Now, the owners haven't taken a dime out of the company since its inception in 2005. Chairman of the board stands on the stage and says, "We don't know when we ever will." Not that they're not entitled, because they are. And he says, "You know, it wouldn't change the planes we fly in, houses we live in, cars we drive, the schools our kids go to. Wouldn't change our lives. So we don't take the money out. Don't need it." But they do take money out for their charities, and they're very, very serious about their charities. Now, this is just one example. They learned about these kids in Peru that in the Andes Mountains were walking uphill both ways. See, you guys going to give me that one? Through the snow, literally, but deep snow in the Andes. And they didn't have a school nearby. So imagine these wind-swept mountains and these little kids walking 4 miles through the snow. So they said, let's go down there and build some schools. But before we go there, let's not be charitable do-gooders. Now, what's a charitable do-gooder? It's somebody with the best of intentions, and they go there, and they dig wells and they build buildings, but don't create the infrastructure for it to inure after they leave. And then it just becomes a cobweb building with nobody in it. Now, our owners are a little different than that. These are long-term thinking people. And what they did is, before they went there, they contacted the local municipalities, then the regional, and then the whole country. And they said, we'll bring our people and we'll bring our money and we'll build the facilities. But you have got to run it after we leave, because we can't do that. That's not our job. And they got the government to put a teacher in and to run the school so it would inure, so it would continue. And this is a big deal to Dr. Sheely. He doesn't want to do an endowment and have the thing 6 months from now all fall apart. You gave enough money, the thing could run and run and run and run, right? And you gave to somebody you felt had a fiduciary responsibility and a sense of keeping it going. Well, that's how these people think. Now, interesting thing happened. When they launched the company in 2005, it was a traditional brick and mortar wholesale retail business. Was not network marketing. And they're doing pretty well. And they hired a big heavyweight marketing firm to come in, analyze their products, analyze their demographics, and make projections. And the marketing firm came back and said, you guys are sitting fat. The products you got are amazing. The science you have is impeccable. And it's in front of an exploding demographic that's crashing into the most expensive healthcare years of its life. And people are wanting to hang on to their health with tooth and claw. And they'll spend money to maintain their quality of life. But there's a problem. The owner says, wow, you just painted a really rosy picture, but there's a problem? And they said, yeah, you're in the wrong distribution channel. With these types of products, you should switch up to the network marketing industry. And thank goodness our owners weren't prejudiced, because in their hometown in Idaho Falls is a company called Melaleuca. And it's an $800 million a year company. Good quality company, good quality products, well run, very respected. And they says, well, how does that work? And the marketing company came back and said, the first thing you're going to have to do is swallow your pride, because you don't know how to do that. And if you try to do it, you'll screw up, you'll waste your money, it'll all blow up, it'll all be for naught. So what we want you to do is to go out in the marketplace, open your checkbook, and recruit and hire the highest quality CEO money can buy. And then let him or her go recruit their own staff, don't micromanage them, and let them teach you how to do the business. Swallow your pride. Tough to do for a billionaire. They did it. They went out and got Michael Brashears. Now, Michael was living in the Bay Area. He kind of likes the city. His wife definitely likes the city. And they made an offer to him, and he says, yeah, I don't know, Idaho Falls, San Francisco. And they says, well, let's give you another zero. Kind of like an Idaho Falls, pretty good. And they finally worked it out. And they were able to attract Michael Brashears. Now, Michael's got a proven track record. He's taken little bitty companies into enormous companies. He sat on the Direct Selling Association's board of directors personally. He knows every company. He knows all the countries. He knows how to get it done. They hired him. He built a staff. Now, Norm was giving me a hard time about how hard I work. I do. But these guys shocked you. I'll get a phone call from Michael Brashears. It'll be 1 in the morning. The CEO. He'll be apologizing because he didn't get back to me earlier. But he had the Swedes in, and he had the Chinese in, and he had the Indonesians in. And finally, now at the end of his day, he's getting back to me. But they do that. It's the hardest working crew I've ever seen in my life. Now, as we get into this, and you say, well, where are we doing business? When I joined them in 2010, they were in those countries. They took a little bit of a breath in 2011, but opened 2 monster markets. Monster. And in 2012, some more monster markets. 2013, they're going crazy. Now, Norm joined me in Puerto Rico. We went down there on our very initial prospecting trip, looking for people. And we hooked up with a few people. It's going to take a little while to develop all this. Doesn't happen overnight, not in a brand new country. But what I can tell you is we're now open in 55 countries. We have 20 home offices, 22 warehouses, and we have internet access in the language of each country. How much capital investment do you think that is? China alone was like 25 million, just one country. Average country, 2, 3 million, 4 million. There's 55 of them. So have our owners made a little bit of an investment in this thing, and they haven't taken a dime out. Sounds kind of crazy, huh? Almost like ludicrous. But they've got this vision, and they're serious about that vision. They don't need the money. And you look at our owners, and they get out in the field with us and work with us. Now, a commitment I've got from our senior director of marketing, worldwide, global, Tyler Sharp, we guarantee to put 100 people in a room, he'll come to Springfield. Put 99 in a room, not a good thing. So, they'll actually come right here when they've got responsibilities for Bonn, Sydney, Tokyo, the big cities with millions of people, and they've already committed to come here the moment we put just a lousy 100 people in a room. So it's a goal that I think we should shoot for. Now, let's get into the science a little bit of who we are backed by. Obviously, you guys know who Dr. Shealy is. He's a local celebrity, founder of the American Holistic Medical Association, author, scientist, world-renowned neurosurgeon, inventor, patent holder. But in addition to Dr. Shealy, we have some other doctors too. Dr. Q-Tab is an MD, PhD, DC. He's a traditionally trained MD, tremendous diagnostician, tremendous clinician. He has 2 practices. It costs you pure cash, no insurance, does not accept insurance. You want to see him, you pay the bill. Now, he also is an individual that takes about 6 months to get in to see. Now, besides that, he's a premium formulator. He formulates for some of the biggest companies and consults for some of the biggest companies in the world, including veterinary products. Mammals are mammals. Now, he's published all over the world in a whole bunch of languages. He's won all these awards, not the least of which is Physician of the Entire Year by the U.S. Congress itself. Dr. Barry Tan. Now, Dr. Barry Tan is an individual that is kind of like Dr. Shealy, an off-the-chart literal genius. Now, there are geniuses, and then there are these people called Mensa, qualified geniuses, and then there are people that even go beyond that. And Dr. Tan was a professor at Amherst. Amherst, pretty good little school. Norm just smiled. Very prestigious. Now, besides the fact that he was a professor, he's got a whole bunch of patents. And he's done a bunch of firsts in botany and in research. And he's the one that discovered the bush in Ecuador. There's only one plant in the world, only one, that's 100% pure delta gamma fraction tocotrienol. There's only one. It's the annatto bush. And he patented the vitamin E extraction. As Dr. Shi said earlier, it's between 50 and 80x potency of regular vitamin E. Now, if I was to say, here is a bottle of just run-of-the-mill vitamin E, what does a 90-count bottle of vitamin E cost? Just run-of-the-mill. $5, $6? For the cheap stuff. For the synthetic. Not natural. Because you can't touch natural for that price. But the synthetic you could. Natural is going to run you 12, 15. Something like that. Up to 20. All right, ours is 32 at member price. It's like joining Costco. Dr. Shealy already mentioned it only costs $40 to be a member. Now, if we're 32, and let's say it's 10 for a regular vitamin E, but you've got to buy 50 bottles to equal one bottle. What's 50 times 10? $500. Now, if this is truly potent, 50x minimum, and we're $32, you'd have to spend $500 to have the same potency. Is this a great buy? Off the hook, crazy great buy. In fact, it's so good that Dr. Oz has named tocotrienol the nutritional supplement of the year. And oh, by the way, if you want the very best, he has it patented. And oh, by the way, he works with us. That's kind of good for us, isn't it? Now, we'll get back to this in a little bit. Dr. Thomas Burke. Now, Tom is a genius. And what I can tell you is he was the clinical professor of cardiology and endocrinology at the University of Colorado. He taught the 4th, 5th, and 6th year graduate students of cardiology and endocrinology. Got to have a couple of brain cells firing at the same time to do that. He's published all over the world. He's reputed to say, or his reputation is, everything he touches gets published. Now, I knew Tom before I came to Kiani. I did some clinical studies with a competing company, and he had the reputation. We hired him to do our statistical analysis on our product with this other company. But he didn't tell me he invented Kiani's Nitro effects, and that there was a better product than what I was using. And later, when I found out about it, I was quite irritated because he didn't tell me. But long story short, Tom's ethics are beyond reproach. And I can simply tell you, he's the one that learned that the nitrate-nitrite extraction of the Tahitian noni fruit created nitric oxide. He's the one that did the original blood gas studies. Brilliant, brilliant guy. We'll get more back on that. Dr. Claire Franco-Mano. That's actually how I met Norm. Dr. Franco-Mano and I became friends, and when you meet Claire, you met Mom. She's humble, she's sweet, and it's just like, oh, can I have a hug? She's that kind of person, isn't she? A lovely, lovely spirited woman, just humble as anybody'd ever want to meet, and brilliant beyond imagination. Claire was a board-certified internal medicine doc at Johns Hopkins that took an interest in genetics and then moved into molecular research genetics. She was handpicked by the National Institutes of Health to be the first clinical director of the Human Genome Research Institute. How many of you have heard that they took DNA samples from people all over the world and mapped the human genetic code? How many of you guys are aware of that? Well, there could only be one clinical director. There can't be two. And she was it. Talk about being in the right place at the right time in history. It'll never happen again. It was her. But she had a second hat. When I first met Claire, I asked her what she did. She says, I'm a doctor. I said, really? Any specialty? She says, yeah, I'm an internist, but I do genetic work. I said, really? She says, yeah, I'm a geneticist. I says, any area of special investigation? She says, yeah, I'm a molecular geneticist. I said, oh. There's not one of those in every street corner. I said, where do you work? The government. She's not telling me. Here she's this big shot, and I'm having to drag it out of her. She's so humble. And I said, really, the government? I said, do you have a title? She said, chief. Okay, molecular research geneticist works at the government, and her title's chief. This is somebody important. I says, well, where do you work in the government? She says, the NIH. Chief, NIH, molecular geneticist. Her title was, she was the chief of the anti-aging, or the genetics division of the anti-aging division at the NIH. She had budgets that are bigger than a lot of cities, major cities. Control of huge research programs. She sits on our board. So now when people say, Dan, is there any science behind Kiani's products? A little bit. You know, a little bit. Now we come back full circle to the wild Alaskan blueberry, and I won't cover this too much, but I just want to point out a couple of things. People will say, Dan, I can run to the grocery store and get blueberries. That's true, you can. And according to Tufts University, there in Boston, they ranked the commercial blueberry as the #1 in the common category in antioxidant capacity. #1. Well, now if there is a common category, there must be some kind of other category. Well, there is. It's called the exotics. And the exotics is where you're going to find noni. It's where you're going to find goji berry. It's where you're going to find a couple other things, including the wild Alaskan blueberry. And guess what's king in the exotic category? Wild Alaskan blueberry. Now, when you cut a regular blueberry in half, what color is the meat? Kind of whitish blue-green. Yeah. When you cut one of these in half, blood red. How thick is the skin on a commercial blueberry? You can bruise it just by rubbing your thumb on it. These, like a rhinoceros skin. And the pigment on these things are so dark they're almost black. They're blue, but they're so deep blue they're almost black. Now, what happened is they evolved in a certain region, Alaska, where the sun doesn't literally set during the summer for a couple of months. So these things are exposed to 24 hours a day of solar radiation. So to protect themselves, they built this very thick, deeply pigmented skin so they wouldn't sunburn. And the additional thing that's interesting in their climate is that early frosts can happen. Deep, cold, killing frosts can occur that could damage the fruit prior to maturization, which means death of that species. So to protect itself, it developed this big, thick, deep skin with a deep, dark pigment, and it's bigger in diameter. Now, the bears that eat it, they're protected by those antioxidants. And when we eat them, we're protected. Now, a person says, what is the ratio in comparison between a regular common blueberry and the wild Alaskan? And anybody that's been involved in horticulture, you know that depending upon where it's grown on the land and the microclimate, it's grown. You have the hilltop, you have the crest, you have the hillside, you have the swale, you have the bottomland. You'll have a higher concentration of active ingredients in the swale. And it'll be different depending on where it grows. So in nature, you don't have a nice flat piece of ground with an even amount of fertilizer and an even amount of water. So depending on where it grows, it's going to be between 10 and 30x. So that gives you a bit of an idea. And remember, we locked out our competition commercially on these things. Now when you look at it and say, what are the ingredients in those things? Well, instead of saying, we found it, we got the one. And a lot of companies out there, they'll get on their little piece of turf and they'll say, we got it, and everything else sucks, but we got the good one. Everything else, just ignore that. How ludicrous is that? That's nuts. Because no matter which one you choose, because we're talking about the top 10, you'll see another slide here in a second, but you'll see that they do not have the exact same constituent contribution to our health. Each one has its own very unique set of benefits that it imparts to human health. So why would you choose just one at the expense of the others? How foolish is that? Well, our scientists in their wisdom said, we're not doing that. Let's do some analysis and determine what the top 10 are. Could have been the top 11, but they said, let's look at the top 10. The top 10 best of the best superfruits in the world. Doesn't matter where they're from, Himalayas, China, Alaska, Maine, they don't care. They got the money, right? They're going to source the best of the best. They did that, put it in a single formula, and then they added to it a full day's supply of vitamins. Now, when you look at that list, you'll see that there are companies that have done billions of dollars with just one of those actual superfruits. We put them all in there. That creates an interlocking matrix unlike any product that's ever been offered. It's the most powerful, best-in-class product money can buy. It's $32 a month, member price. We've got competition that are only putting one of those ingredients in. And they're charging $120 to $160 to $180 a month. So people will say, you're network marketing, so the prices must be exorbitant, right? Not at Kione. Our value is equal to our potency, and that's rare in this industry. Now, a person says, well, how much would I have to eat of the various foods to have an equivalent value? Guys, if you ate everything that's here, you'd be this big around and broke. But you'd also have to eat all of that. So when you start understanding the relativity of the power of that product, it is stunning. And then you say, what can you make for medical claims? Well, first of all, you can't make a medical claim, but you can make a limited health claim. Do you see that bunch of wording in front